Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening, everyone. First tonight, a coroner says a mentally ill man who stabbed a Hobart shopkeeper to death in 2016 was released from prison early with no support. The coronial findings into Vula Delios's death delivered today, revealing there's significant room for improvement within Tasmania's prison system.
Authorities piecing through the scene of a brutal and shocking death. 68-year-old Vula Delios stabbed 10 times in broad daylight inside her North Hobart grocery store in 2016. The coronial findings released today, emotions running high for the family.
A bit of anxiety and everything, but as I said, it doesn't bring her back or anything, so I might just leave it to this at the moment and see how we go with what's being written down.
Her killer, Daryl Royston Wayne Cook, was released from prison the day before he fatally attacked the grandmother. He was found not guilty of murder on the ground of insanity. The coroner, Simon Cooper, saying Mr Cook was suffering from an obvious untreated mental illness, that he had an extensive history of violent, erratic and problematic behaviour both in and out of prison, and he was released without support. An inquest held last August, scrutinising Risdon Prison's capacity to treat and manage mental illness. The coroner finding it is apparent there is considerable room for improvement, while questioning why Mr Cook was released in the first place. Also, council assisting making a list of recommendations, including reopening the supported independent living unit, comprehensive mental health discharge plans for exiting prisoners, mental health training for all Risdon prison staff, a review of the remission system, to make the decision for remission reviewed by an independent body, and a review of the community corrections orders. The Premier saying he will look closely at the findings while continuing to push forward with changes.
There's been a task force that was established and that's looking at ensuring that we can provide those that are in prison that need additional support, more support.
Coroner Cooper concluding all factors regarding Mr Cook's prison release and mental health contributed to Mrs Delios's shocking, tragic and needless death. Ruby Kamain, 7 Tasmania News.
A coronavirus update now, and Tasmanians headed to or tempted to head back to work after taking a COVID test are being warned to stay away. Casuals will now be covered by assistance grants as the state government tries to learn from Victoria's mistakes.
A warning to our workforce.
There is no point turning up for a test because you feel unwell and then going and doing a shift.
As the lessons from Victoria become clear, Tasmania will now expand assistance grants to include casual and low-income workers if they take time off to take a test.
$250 per individual, up to $1,000 per family.
$1,500 will also be available through the Commonwealth's paid pandemic leave. The announcement coming on the same day as TT Line reveals a COVID close call. A shore-based contractor in Melbourne has been sent home after contracting the virus.
That they did not work in any role that had any contact with any of the members of the public or anyone hopping on to the TT Line or the Spirit of Tasmania.
Authorities say the case poses no threat to Tasmania, but are pleading with the public not to drop their guard.
We need to continue to keep practising our physical distancing.
In another sign of recovery, doctors say face-to-face appointments have picked up in recent weeks. They're pleased patients are no longer avoiding clinics over COVID fears. However,
we don't want public apathy to lead to people presenting to the clinic willy-nilly face-to-face, because there is still a risk that coronavirus is going to rear its head in Tasmania, and I think that really is just a matter of time.
The Cancer Council says there's another ticking time bomb. Cancelled checkups because of the pandemic could lead to busier hospitals down the track.
I think they'll see a huge spike in presentations and of late presentations. And so that's also going to have an impact on the health system, because there's going to be many more people in that health system that may not have been there if cancer had been detected earlier.
Sean McComish, 7 Tasmania News.
And staff in Tasmania's aged care sector are carefully watching the escalating COVID situation in other states. Strict worker and visitation measures remain in place to protect our most vulnerable.
Temperature testing and strict hand washing now standard practice when entering a health facility. Measures in place here at Glenview Aged Care Home.
We've had to develop very quickly emergency procedures and pandemic-specific procedures. So those processes are in place.
2020 has been a year like no other for the sector. Pandemic protocols changing the way staff work. Extra PPE, clean teams on standby and specialised ongoing training strategies all rolled out.
All of this is in theory, and we obviously have some concerns based on what's happening in Victoria about what would that look like if it ever unfortunately had to come into play.
And it's that escalating situation that has staff on tenterhooks, ready to react if needed.
Right now, we need to be watching what's happening in Victoria and learning from the experience over there so that we can be better prepared.
Looking at those families, the providers, and they're in our hearts and minds. It's a horrible, tragic situation, but I do believe that aged care is really doing the best that it can with the environment that we're sitting in.
The Premier's decision to keep our borders shut welcomed.
Because if we do see community transmission in Tasmania, then we will see cases in aged care facilities for sure.
Aged care homes in Tasmania are still under some COVID restrictions. Staff doing all they can to prevent detouring on the state's road to recovery. Louise Huber, 7 Tasmania News.
The relatives of a man living in Launceston are urging anyone who may have seen him to contact police. Michael Joseph Lenson, whose family lives in the Netherlands, have not heard from him in several months and are concerned for his welfare. The 48-year-old was last spotted at a business in Launceston CBD on March 30. He's described as 180 centimetres tall with a solid build, short brown hair, fair skin, and he speaks English with an European accent. It's not the first time Mr Lenson has gone missing for several months. Tasmania has achieved a new record for its frosty temperatures. The mercury at Lyweenie in the state's Central Highlands plunged to minus 14.2 degrees at 6 o'clock this morning.
The previous record was minus 13 degrees, and that was set at 3 different sites, Butler's Gorge, Tarraleah and Shannon, back in 1983. At that time, the Lyweenie weather station was not yet operating, so it's possible on that day in 1983 it would have been colder at Lyweenie.
Lywenie's inland and elevated position believed to be why the temperature was so low. Thankfully, the weather won't be as cold for the weekend. It's been a tough pandemic and a cool winter, but many sleeping rough in Hobart have still managed to access healthcare. Morton Group Medical Services seeing a recent rise in vulnerable Tasmanians needing help from its mobile doctor clinic, with the care said to be critical.
You're looking for somewhere to sleep, you're looking for something to eat, and often medical issues are not dealt with, and unfortunately as a result you find the life expectancy of rough sleepers is really quite short.
We've literally saved people's lives through this service. We've cured people of their hepatitis C. We've helped people who were in desperate need of medical attention, and we're helping to prolong their life.
The clinic now operating as part of the 24/7 Safe Space program. Meanwhile, one Tasmanian is preparing to spend a night suspended from the side of a hotel to raise funds for those homeless, taking part in the annual Salvo Sleep Out.
Braving the elements for a night in Tasmania is enough to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Sleeping while suspended in mid-air even more so. And Haig Rice is doing just that.
I see so many people homeless, an increasing number it would seem, and people sleeping in cars, and it's really disturbing. I wonder how they get on.
The Salvation Army's Sleep Out is aiming to raise $50,000 to keep the Hobart Street to Home outreach program running for another year.
It's about one night of discomfort that is going to change the life of somebody else. The real risk of exposure, the real risk of insecurity can just exacerbate health, mental health and other issues.
Haig Rice will be suspended from the Hotel Grand Chancellor, experiencing a view of Hobart like no other and a night's sleep like no other.
All our work involves being at height, so we're very familiar with the aerial environment. This is a bit like another day's work, except that I get to sleep.
We provide homes for people, but people with lots of money, so it's nice to support people that don't have that.
With COVID restrictions in place, the sleep out will be very different this year.
A virtual night where they'll be able to sleep out in their car or in the couch or in their backyard or at a mate's tent and still tune in, get a full night's experience.
100 people are expected to participate on September 3, double that of last year. Elizabeth O'Neill, 7 Tasmanian News.
King Island's key freight vessel is finally back up and running after spending nearly 2 months out of action. The John Digan has been dry docked in Sydney, undergoing repairs to its propeller as well as undertaking sea trials. But today it arrived back at Grassy with a full load of cargo following a port call at Melbourne. The shipping company has thanked the King Island community for its understanding during the repair process. They're a menacing distraction for drivers, and now the RACT has a few ideas on how to handle your mobile phone. New research shows while most motorists are aware of the dangers, few know what to do about it. The RACT has launched a new campaign called Drive in the Moment, listing ways to avoid the devices.
One of the main strategies to be aware of is to actually turn your phone off while you're driving, so that temptation is not there.
For more information and tips, head to the RACT website. The group behind the controversial Mount Wellington cable car proposal has handed over extra details for its planning application as demanded by the Hobart City Council. But a vital part is still missing. Experts are yet to receive a bushfire management plan, with COVID-19 travel restrictions blamed for the delay.
This will be a sustainable project, but we have to make sure that we do operate to the best fire standards. That's just taking some more conversations with the TFS.
The Council's General Manager says once that last detail is handed over, it will open up the plan for community consultation. They're usually big and not very attractive, but thanks to some very creative students, one Glenorchy rubbish truck is now standing out from the rest. The vehicle covered with a special piece of art created as part of a competition to raise awareness of how to dispose of waste the right way. The theme of this year's event was Sort It Out, encouraging the community to make sure no unnecessary items are sent to landfill.
Instead of putting things that could get turned into new things and putting them in the wrong bin. So it's to educate people and tell them which bins to put it in.
And it's fantastic that they'll be driving around the municipality and people will be able to see this really important sorting it out waste message thanks to our fantastic students.
The artwork will now be displayed on the trucks for the next year. A Tasmanian footballer is enjoying a bonus year playing in her home state after being forced from Victoria by the virus. Mia King is now starring for Launceston in the TSLW and is aiming to ink a new deal at the highest level.
After debuting for the Kangaroos in the AFLW earlier this year, Mia King is fast becoming king of the castle in her home state.
The next level up at the AFLW, you know, it's more intense and more fast-paced, but I think it really helped and gave me that confidence coming back to TSL.
She played 4 games with North Melbourne and was destined for the club's VFLW side, but plans to play and study in Melbourne have been benched for now. Instead, King is playing for Launceston in the State League, and this weekend she comes up against former teammate Libby Haynes, who, along with twin sister Chloe, is now playing for Glenorchy after being delisted from the Roos.
She's awesome down back, really good defender, and Chloe did ACL, so I think she's just focusing on rehab at the moment.
While another former teammate, Abby Green, has moved to the Pies, King is closing in on a contract extension at the Roos, and the fact she can keep playing, unlike those in Victoria, helps her case.
Being down Tassie, I have a really big advantage to just, you know, improve my game, focus on my skills, and yeah, just really, you know, keep learning new things about footy.
Meanwhile, this year's good news story, Brighton, is pushing for another win in the SFL. The club came out of recess this year and has already notched up an historic victory.
It's a great feeling. You know, this time last year, the senior club wasn't even there, so you know, they're really a good bunch of young guys, willing to listen, willing to learn. So that's our main focus. So it's been fantastic.
We're excited to play Brighton tomorrow. Obviously, the last couple of years have been pretty tough for them. They're young, and we're young as well. So it's going to be a really good game.
Tom Johnson, 7 Tasmanian News.
Richie Port has powered to second place in the Mont Ventoux Challenge. Known for being one of the strongest climbers in world cycling, the Tasmanian fiercely chased the front runner up the 20-kilometre climb, but crossed the line 18 seconds behind.
Of course you want to win, but Alexander is very strong today. I think he's a super talent, so to be second on the top here is a great result.
The race leads into the Tour de France, which is due to start later this month.
Good evening. Devonport and King Island our top today with 13, Hobart and Burnie 11, Launceston a high of 12. The coldest day measured in Tasmania's history today, with Lyawini putting on minus 14.2, but it did warm up by 18 degrees during the day, so that's something. Friendly Beaches and Helens, Grove and Strawn all 12, Flinders Island and Lowhead 11 and Ooze 10 degrees. Low clouds streamed over the south and east coasts, mostly clear over the remainder of the state. Cloud spirals around the low over New South Wales, cloud bands over the Victorian, New South Wales and Queensland coasts. A few thunderstorms noticed over inland New South Wales as well. Tomorrow, the broad area of high pressure slowly moves to the east, low pressure zones over New South Wales and South Australia. Winds east to southeasterly, 20 to 30 knots over northern waters, lighter inland and more variable over southern waters. Strong wind warning from Sandy Cape up to and including Flinders Island. We also have a minor flood warning for the Jordan and Macquarie rivers. Saturday for Hobart, 12 and cloudy. A morning frost for Medina, 10 the top and 8 degrees for Oatlands. Launceston heading for 12 degrees after an early frost, 13 for Devonport, Lyawini, only minus 8. 12 tomorrow for Burnie and mostly cloudy, 12 the top for Strawn as well after a cold start and 13 for Marrawar. St Helens tomorrow, a light shower or two and 12 further south though for Swansea and Orford, cloudy conditions. On to Sunday, a cold start, a mostly fine and partly cloudy, a possible light shower over the northeast, a frosty start to Monday ahead of another cool, fine, partly cloudy day, and into Tuesday we go. Similar conditions with fine, partly cloudy weather, maybe a shower over the northwest later. Tomorrow right across Australia, fairly cool conditions. Adelaide only 13 with cold weather there. Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney and Brisbane all expecting wet weather. It's cloudy in Hobart, 7 right now, partly cloudy in Launceston, 8. Devonport, mostly cloudy and 6 degrees. What about that minus 14 at Lyawini, Kim? In fact, up there today, they were kicking holes in the air just to get outside.
Oh dear, be careful you don't do a hammy there, Merv.